right, welcome back to another episode of the Better Contractor. As usual so far, I've got the Bean King next to me.
Hello.
A.K.A. John. And I've got Travis.
Still working on that.
We had a few nicknames before we started recording, but
right.
he didn't like it.
But we're still thinking about it.
Yeah, we'll work on it. Anyway, today we're going to talk a little bit about pricing your services for success. So we've noticed in our line of work, and it's kind of a little bit of a sore subject for me, really, but you go back and you see all these different low bidders. You know, this is in our line of work, whether it's in lawn, it's in every industry. But it seems especially relevant in the contracting world. So whether you're building a house, you're doing lawn care, you're doing landscape, you're doing tree, there's so many people that want to go just low price. And I feel like that's a little bit our fault, meaning that a lot of us, we don't do it here because I've realized it. But a lot of people, that's actually their marketing effort is, hey, we're cheap. Use us, choose us.
The affordable.
Yeah, we're affordable.
So when you say it's our fault, it's not
the industry's fault.
Okay.
Yeah, because too many of the people in the industry are allowing their marketing efforts to be focused on that as well. You know, and even at LanderCorp, like we've went through over the years and kind of determined by our bidding process who honestly is just completely low cost and who out there is best value. And internally, we're best value all the way. Like actually, to be honest, we don't bid anything out. We basically choose our vendors simply based upon their core values. So, and honestly too, we talked about this earlier. One of the big things I look at is, do they respond to an email, right, same day or, within 24 hours? Do they deliver the product or the service in a timely way? Do they embody our core values, and are they a direct extension of us? And the answer is no to those. I really don't care if they're 50% cheaper, because I'm not going to use them because that's not how we operate.
So what's the consequence of going with somebody who the values are misaligned?
So in my opinion, if you're sitting here telling your customers in your marketing efforts that, hey, we respond to you as a customer within 24 hours or whatever, if I have a vendor, though, that I have to rely on for that answer that customer is asking for, or part of my product or service also relies on them, so my promise to you as the customer is 24 hours or whatever it is, but now my vendor is not able to help me, actually do that for you, then I have the wrong vendor. And I know for us, it's helped us so much too with just, being able to deliver.
Yeah.
So in-house, we do not really bid stuff out at all. And we don't market ourselves as the cheapest either. And there's a lot of companies that still do. And there's just so many issues with that. And in our world, we have to deal with procurement departments. So it's a little bit different than like an individual homeowner. But again, even with individual homeowners, I can sit here and pick, who is my customer. As a lawn landscape company, I can choose to go through and say, hey, I'm going to do this higher end neighborhood, or I'm going to do one that's not as high end. And if I'm doing the one that's not as high end, for the most part, it probably is going to be more low cost centered. Yep. Just logically, that's what it's going to be. If it's one that's more high end, I'm probably dealing with someone who really just wants me to handle it more so than just be low bid. They don't want to babysit my butt.
And I know, like in the neighborhood that we're in, and even previous place we lived, it wasn't necessarily high end, but there was still that value proposition of, man, what's my time worth? What's the time that I'm spending with my kids or not, or other interests? And I'll be honest, a few years ago we lived in Missouri. We moved back to Texas 2.5 years ago. But in the Missouri place, we would have paid more than what the person was charging. And we were paying higher than what we maybe wanted, but it came down to, what's the value? If I do that with my skills and my equipment, it's going to take me a day. I'm going to lose a day of my life, Saturday or whatever. And especially for these places that have homeowners associations where it's required to have certain maintenance standards, I think there's a lot more out there. And I know in the current neighborhood that we live in now, there's a lot of people who they would pay more, and they would pay for somebody to come out. So there's two things that have occurred. One is you can't find consistency. You can't find like, hey, we needed our yard mowed. Like Tuesday, you said that you were going to be out there, get it, rain, whatever, labor challenges. Now we're like a week and a half since then. We're getting notices from the HOA. There's been no communication on your part. I'm having to reach out to you to find out what's going on. And so you're constantly hopping in, and there hasn't been a great place to, and maybe there's a tool that can be developed too, but where do you find these? In a lot of the Facebook posts and social media, like, hey, who do you use? You constantly see those, but majority of the conversations with the neighbors who ended up pivoting, like, I'm just going to mow myself. Just because you couldn't find reliable, you couldn't find quality, you were willing, and we were willing to pay more. Those conversations didn't come up.
Yeah. So as a company, if you stay in that, we're low price mindset, you're never able to deliver.
And don't necessarily assume that they're wanting low. Talk about the value. Talk about the value proposition. I know a lot of our neighbors and us too, we'd hear that, like, okay, you're charging X amount, articulate a little bit more about what you're getting for that. Don't just assume that they're wanting the lowest and feel bad about it. But if you can articulate, hey, this is my price and this is what you're getting for it, we're going to communicate with you. We're not like those. Show the differentiation between. I think that's what I know. Conversations with some of the people in the industry, they're just assuming that they want the lowest bid when it comes to residential. That's not maybe necessarily the case. And when they did get pushback, there wasn't really a great articulation of what's the value they're getting at. So yeah, we're not going to be the cheapest, but here's who we are. Here's who we represent.
Right.
Here's what we'll deliver.
Yeah.
And then you got to make sure you deliver it, though.
Yeah.
I have seen that happen a few times with some companies where they market themselves at X, they deliver, below that, then you're setting yourself up for disaster as well. So, but I know in-house, like, I look at, again, we deal with procurement departments. So some of them, that is their policy. Their policy is low bid. And some of them, the policy is best value, meaning that you maybe take 5 bids and then you automatically kick out bids 1 and 5, the highest and the lowest. Then you're choosing based upon the 3 in the center, which are probably more accurately priced, because most likely the lowest bid is not going to deliver, or he messed up his bid and it's actually not accurate, which means you're probably going to have a legal contract dispute or something on that vendor at the end. And number 5, most likely bid it high, to be honest, because he was busy and he didn't want to tell you, no, we're not going to do your work. So instead, he just bid it high enough, knowing that you're not going to accept him. And if you do accept him, there's enough profit in that job that he'll make it happen. So in our world, though, with procurement, we've kind of learned to not necessarily bid some of the ones that is low bid, because it's not worth the time, because bidding a project is not free. It ties up talent. It ties up people to go bid it, to look at it. It ties up office help. And if your chance of success is 5% and the customer doesn't value any of the stuff that we are selling, customer service and all the value added type stuff, then they're not your customer anyway. So.
And when you're the low price contractor, you always have to be in a state of fear of somebody coming in and providing the same service for cheaper.
Yeah, because you're not doing anything about value.
Right.
It's just simply your price, and your price is, honestly, it's a commodity, meaning that anybody else can probably beat it if they're willing to work cheaper than you.
Yeah.
But what we see in all those is you're not going to be in business for very long if you don't make money. Like, that's just business 101. And you see with low bids, you can't, if you've made a mistake in your bid, and that's the trouble with like the procurement departments, if you've made a mistake in your bid and you're still going to stay in business, still perform the contract, you really only have 2 options, or a few options. Cut corners, which means safety, quality, or whatever, or don't perform the whole scope of work, which we've run into on projects before, where we come to a right-of-way or a job site where it's very clear that the person that was there before us did not do the entire scope of work. And then we get there and we're like, well, shoot, we got to do this whole thing.
Yep.
Ends up costing us actually more money because we're not going to skip that spot. So that spot took longer. So, again, contract issues too. So, was you going to say something too? Mm-hmm. So anyway, so it's a little bit of a mindset. So for the contractors out there, lawn care, landscape, whatever, what can you do about this? And I think really the answer comes back to changing how you're marketing and selling your service. Stop simply making it about low bid only. Find out what you're good at. So are you good at, when your crew shows up, they always perform the scope? Because that's actually not uncommon to not do the whole scope.
Right.
I don't know how many times, even at our house, not the current contractor, but previous, I'll walk outside and they forget to blow the sidewalk off. Not a big deal, but I still have to go get a leaf blower and blow the sidewalk off. Or they forget to edge, or they forget to do the leaves, or they forget to do whatever. And that's where, so if your strength is that, or your strength is, we have all brand new equipment, like we're going to show up every week because our equipment's more reliable. Or our guys are passionate about what they do. So find those strengths that you're good at, market on those strengths instead of marketing on the price, and then sell that and market that.
I know there was a couple conversations. So a couple of the expos and some of the breakouts they had was dealing with the economic conditions and higher inflation rates and the cost of doing business. And there was just a general fear of, well, in order for me to even just maintain, I'm going to have to raise prices, and I don't want to have that conversation. We're going to lose business. And they built it up in their head. There was a couple companies. There was one that was well over 400 crew, pretty successful one of the Midwest. And then there's one on the East Coast that was about 60, but a very successful one. And they didn't hesitate as far as, we raised prices to accommodate for it. And the thing that was common between both of them was we articulated that to the customers. We had a very clear message like, hey, this is what it's costing us. We're not just raising it. What you're feeling there, I get it. And I think both of them said the majority of the time, 9 out of 10, they didn't lose. They understood, the customer understood. And pricing's so important in multiple aspects. And I think there's just a fear that if I ask this, and I don't fully understand, maybe it's just rumor and partial experience to you that they've come up against some people who push back on price, and that made them gun shy about charging maybe a higher price to cover doing things right. And so they just feel like they have. But it came down to being able to stand on your values or principles, understanding what you're doing, the value that adds, the importance of that, and being able to articulate back to the customer. So even in those tough conversations where they weren't the cheapest already, and they're having to raise prices, those conversations went better than what most people would expect because they were able to communicate to the customer appropriately. And
because they're actually delivering.
Yes.
Because if they weren't doing a good job, the customer then will say,
Yeah.
I wasn't happy anyway, I'm definitely not paying more. So again, it really goes back to, marketing yourself, but then delivering on what you're saying you're going to do.
In a market like we're in right now, if your customer doesn't understand that you have to raise your prices or your rates, they're probably not a customer that's worth having. And
to be honest, you're probably going to have some customers that there's a threshold that they're dealing with things too. So it's not to say that 100%, and neither were those companies, and they did have some customers that bowed out, but not compromising your principles. And I think that go back to culture and who you are as an individual, as a company, as a brand, and staying true to it. And through economic times where it's good and bad, your brand will sustain itself, and those customers will come back. Social media and people talk, and if you're staying true to your brand, whether that one customer dropped out or not, conversations will persist, and you'll still be represented in those conversations when they're like, hey, I can't find anybody, or like, hey, this company, like, we've used them for years. So staying true to your value, understanding who you are, what are your values, what are your morals, ethics, what's your culture, and staying true to it, and not compromising on that just to go to lower cost. And I think it's circling back around. I don't think the fear there that I have to, so long as you add the value you deliver on it, and they understand that that's part of your brand, and you articulate that to the customer.
Yeah, and we'll talk about culture some in previous or future episodes. But culture doesn't just stop at the employee. Like, it also, goes to the customer. So, if I can't imagine running a business and being, thinking, hey, these are my core values or whatever, this is my culture, and then going and selecting a customer that doesn't meet it either, because technically your culture is extended to there. So, and that, again, goes back to that conversation. If you're, like you said, doing a quality job, most customers are going to be fine with a 5-10% increase anyway, because they're very satisfied with what you're doing. and they've probably been burnt in the past, so they're just happy they found you.
Yeah.
So so as long as it's not like 100% price increase, it's 5-10%, which is most of the time what you're asking for. They're going to pay it and move on. And if you do lose one or two, if you've increased your rates by 5% and you lost one or two customers, three customers, and that equates to 1% of your business, you still grew your business by 4%, and you have less work to do. So,
and going back to not to get into whatever that podcast is for culture, but that manifests in other ways when your people know that you're taking care of them and it's a career for them. It's family. You have less turnover. You have less incidents, which actually makes up for the revenue that you have increased or decreased for that one job. Having stability and longevity in the business, and not having to expend money in other ways for having lesser values or standards, it'll even out.
Yeah. And like you said, being able to charge the customer what you actually need to be charging, it does allow you to actually pay the employees enough to retain them. It does allow you to go buy that newer equipment, which is more reliable, which then allows you to always show up to the job site, hopefully, because you got newer equipment and better employees. It just allows you to better perform altogether, which means you're beating your competition. So I think at the end of the day, kind of in a nutshell a little bit here, you cannot market yourself strictly on price unless that's the game you want to play. There are contractors that do that, and that is their little niche, and they're good at it. I'm not going to name competitors on this show, but there's some I can think of in my head that are very, very good at being cheap, and they're huge. That's not what I want to do. And they're working on very slim margins, which means they have very, very little room for mess ups. And that's just not the business model I know I want anyway. Yep. But anyway, but you got to be very careful, I think, too. So I think some people may hear this and be like, oh, well, I'm going to increase my rates by 20% tomorrow. It'll be a recipe for not for success if you do that and you go to that customer site and there is nothing at all different than there was last time. Yeah. So if you show up and your crew is not performing, not executing the work, leaving stuff behind, and that customer has to babysit your work, if you're rolling up in a janky truck and a falling apart box trailer, with an old mower, more than likely they're thinking, something's off here. I have this marketing effort, but this is what showed up, and they're charging me for this, but I'm still getting the actual low bid contractor. You cannot do that. So you're going to have to make sure, contractors, that you're doing both. You're delivering on that service. What else you guys got to add?
My favorite saying of all time is, "You get what you pay for."
Oh yeah, we've used that a few terms around here. We've used that a few times. And I go back a little bit too. We kind of use that expression too, like, push the other contractors to stop low bidding each other. But a little bit of that goes back to, it's not just that, it's a little bit, us calling this out a little bit too. Most people don't say much about it.
Right.
They just get mad and they move on to a different customer. But at least for you guys that are working more in the commercial space, you definitely should be calling this out some. Because I do have a little bit of a pet peeve with some of the companies that say, hey, we have these core values. We're, all about safety. We're all about quality. We're all about this. We're all about that. But then they choose whoever is a vendor, a contractor, and they let them do whatever on their job site. And to me, I view that job site as that's an extension of me.
Right.
So therefore, whoever I choose to work that job site also needs to be an extension of me and my core values. So, calling that kind of stuff out, like, you can't demand this and only pay this. It's just not how it works. Business, you're going to charge for what you get. So if you're going low bid, but you're demanding this, those two are never going to meet.
No.
You're going to get this. You're not going to get that.
I do have a story. So we recently started working for a company let me back up. We started working for a customer who we've done business for in the past, and I can't say with 100% certainty that they went the low-price contractor route, but the contractor was unable to perform the job. So they reached out to us and asked us if we could come in and finish that job for them because their contractor is failing. And we did, and it turned out to be a very lucrative contract for a pretty lengthy amount of time. And hopefully that customer realized that they're better off going with a contractor that they know they can rely on, they can trust, and do the job and do it safely.
Yeah. And that's not the only example over the years either. There's been multiple times where we've lost a bid. And a lot of our stuff, just so you guys are aware, is on an annual contract. So meaning we bid it out, or it's not bid, well, whatever. It's either renewed or it's bid out annually. So there's been multiple times where I can think through where we've had a contract for 2 or 3 years. It goes out for bid. They end up choosing the low bid. We's like, you know what? So, okay, for 1 year, we do not have this contract anymore. And I'm not kidding. At the end of that year, we're back on the bid list. And they're like basically requesting that we come back to perform the work because, again, they went low bid. That dealt with them a whole bunch of issues. And the thing at the end of the day is, if I have to babysit you, I have time. As we all know, time equals money. So it's really not low bid because now I have to put my time into it. Yep. So whether you're a business, that it costs money to pay people to go babysit a contractor, or if you're a homeowner or a person, more of a like a landowner type deal, then it's just time that you don't have to spend doing this. You've hired someone to do it, so they need to just do it. So,
and part of the reason, yes or no, part of the reason why they came back was because you didn't compromise who you were.
Right.
Even losing that bid, like it would be easy, and it is easy for companies to say, like, crap, we just lost that bid. Maybe we should lower the price, which was going to come at a price for who you are, and maybe the values and the things that you offer. If you did that and you came back, right now they're offering you to come back and be a part of their program or work on whatever it is, because who you are, the values, and they know the quality of work. If you degrade that, you're then degrading your brand. You come back and you can't deliver what they were expecting. But because that wasn't true, and they knew who you were, even though you were more expensive, they came back because you maintained your integrity.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. So I think kind of to wrap this up, guys, there's a few things like key takeaways. So one, think about your marketing efforts. So whatever you're doing for marketing now, evaluate that, look at your content, look at what your messaging is. And if the messaging is primarily, we're cheap, that's probably not the right messaging. And then number two, go a little bit deeper and think, okay, what am I delivering though? So if you're going to redo your messaging and marketing, you've obviously have to think, okay, what is company A's strength? Then you need to market that strength instead of just the price, but you need to improve the overall package as a whole, and then do your pricing almost backwards. So to perform at an A level, what does that cost? That's what your marketing should be. That's what your pricing should be. That's your messaging going forward. But then second, so that's part A. The other part is don't be afraid to turn customers down. Like we have fired customers before because of that kind of stuff. They're a drain on your management staff. They're a drain on your employees. And if you're not making money doing their work and they're a drain, what are you doing? Like that's not what business is about. So, but again, like we said earlier, you have to actually perform, actually deliver what you're saying. But don't be afraid to not choose that customer. If you know they're low bid, let somebody else do the work. But I think as contractors, we've got to start calling out that cheap. And gosh, every industry is that way though. Right. I look back at like the building trades industry even. How many times have you heard about these just horrific deals where somebody's hired somebody that's just been completely messed up? It's the same way. They go back to low bid.
Yeah, I've seen in the creative industry too, and there's some funny videos out there that they give 3 snapshots. So like somebody who's doing artistic work for like marketing or whatever, and like time constraints. I need this by tomorrow, or here's my $100 budget, whatever. It's like, okay, here's your drawing. And they do like, well, here based on time and money, here's the things that I can deliver. And
it looks like a little third grader horse,
right? Like,
instead of like a.
I can do it. Here's what you're gonna get. I mean, so every industry that deals with it. I mean, and I think those making those videos are companies that are also trying to help their culture. Like, look, guys, don't just accept. You guys got to push back on the customer a little bit and help set expectations. So every industry does it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think really, this is a little bit of a side topic, but I think really you owe it to your employees because in post-COVID, everybody's dealing with a totally different labor market than you were a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't really see how the low bid model works right now. Because to me, if you're doing low bid post-COVID especially, I have no idea how you're finding anybody worthy of hiring to operate equipment that I would want on my property. I really don't know.
I don't think they are. That story I mentioned a little bit ago, the contractor that we replaced, they had employees on their job site that didn't know how to operate the equipment that they needed to perform the job.
Yeah. So that's the result of right there.
Yep.
So, I think as we wrap this up, just really evaluate that. I'm not saying everybody's doing this low bid deal, but there are plenty that do. And I would just really evaluate what you're doing, if it's working, if that's the business model you really want to have. And if it's not, then you need to pivot and move to something different. But again, you've got to deliver on to. So, anybody else got anything?
Nope, I'm good.
If not, we're at 25 minutes and we will call that a wrap. If you guys liked it, please share it. Talk to you next time. See ya.